Well, 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 it is the postseason. It is the playoffs, and we're back in here on Three Dog Thursday on the YouTube Video Roundtable. Not only if you're hearing us, however you found us, through a social media link or through Apple Podcasts, Spotify, Google Podcasts, come see what the fellas look like. Maybe you don't want to see what we look like, but hey, come check it out anyway. Here as part of the YouTube Roundtable, search Three Dog Thursday on YouTube. See what we look like on the Roundtable. Let me introduce my distinguished postseason guest, Sal Capaccio. Sal Sports on social media from WGR Radio in Buffalo. Sideline brother from another mother with the Buffalo Bills. It's playoffs, baby. How are you?
Pretty good, man. It's playoffs in Buffalo. Haven't had this since 1996. It's been a long, long time, guys.
That's true. He's been in the playoffs, but not a home game with that. We'll just kind of go clockwise, or I guess this would be backwards, counterclockwise here on the Zoom. Grant Paulsen, who is on middays on the FM sports station WJFK in D.C., the Grant and Danny show. They kill it there in the D.C. market. Good to have the young Jedi from my Sirius XM days. Now I'm going way back, like 15 years ago when he was a young Jedi. He's not so young anymore. He's married. He's got a kid. He's now a full Jedi. I don't know what to think. How are you?
I'm doing great. I'm ready for the postseason. And yet, it maybe hasn't been quite as long of a drought since a home playoff game, but Washington and the playoffs have not been best friends here over the years. Just 6 playoff appearances, 4 division titles since 1991. So they are back in the mix, and people here are very, very excited despite
yes, no doubt.
a 7-9 record to win a bet.
Yeah, to win that division. There's no doubt there's been a drought in Tampa Bay, too, of some 13 years. Also with us from the Sports Gambling Podcast, their network of shows, the Sports Gambling Podcast, a phenomenal 2020 as we flip the calendar to 2021. Sean Green, he and Ryan Kramer on that podcast. We bow to you guys and all of the knowledge. The hashtag is DGens only, for degenerates only. You have been killing it for the DGens at the end of 2020 and hope to continue in the postseason, right?
Yeah, no, I mean, not to toot my own horn, but 60% on my NFL locks this year. And then Kramer and I, we entered the OddsShark Capper Cup. It was a bunch of other, handicappers, and we came in third place in that out of a pretty big field. So feeling good going into the playoffs. And, I mean, I'm just stoked to have 6 playoff games to bet on in one weekend. I've been trying to give my wife the heads up of, it's going to be all day Saturday. It's going to be all day Sunday. It's unprecedented. So really excited to talk football and then watch a bunch of football.
Oh, no doubt. And yeah, it's kind of like the NCAA tournament for those first couple of days. It's lunchtime and you're not going to see me again until Saturday while that's going on. And hopefully we get that again coming in March. All right. So the NFL is here. And again, we got different perspectives from Buffalo to the DC area and all the way West Coast where Sean is in Los Angeles, even though he's an Eagles guy, as you know, if you listen to the Sports Gambling Podcast. I promise I will keep Grant and Sean as separated as possible for the ending of that game the other night. Of course, the Eagles have a bigger problem with Peterson.
I got no problem with Sean. I'd like to thank Sean.
Yeah, exactly. The Washington football team got what
Giants. The Giants fans are the ones that have been, blowing up my mentions and yelling at me. So Grant and I are on the same team here.
Yeah, no doubt. All right, so let's get to it. Let's start first here with Sal, and looky here, the Buffalo Bills. You're not in the background. Where's Waldo on the photo that we're looking at on the YouTube Roundtable on the punt return against Miami last week. But you can see the celebration on the faces behind as Isaiah McKenzie took that punt return in. What a season for the Bills, Sal. Give me some more on the finish up here as the Bills finish as the East champions, first time since the mid-90s, and the 2 seed. Hello.
Yeah, well, first of all, you guys are there talking about droughts and you only have 6 playoff games in so many years. You guys are drinking out of a garden hose compared to what we've been like here in Buffalo for 20 years, okay? I mean, this is unbelievable. It's unprecedented for really this generation of Bills fans and Bills Mafia, TJ. It's incredible, what this team has done to really kind of keep this city moving through this entire pandemic and, people feeling good about it. As you guys know, we are all about our Buffalo Bills here in Buffalo. And when you're from Buffalo, it's about a few things. It's chicken wings, it's snow, and it's the Buffalo Bills, really. And when the Sabres are good, it's about them too, but that's who we are. We're not LA or Chicago or Washington or Philadelphia. We love our team so much here, and I think this team really encapsulates what Buffalo Bills football has become. That picture you just showed, you see those people in the background. pulling for each other, cheering for each other. This is a true family here, and that's really what Bills Mafia has been about and why they've embraced this team so much. And really, now that we finally we wandered through the wilderness for 20 years trying to find a quarterback here, and finally Josh Allen comes along. And for all the people who thought that this kid was going to be a bust and he was never going to work out, here he is in the MVP discussion of the league. It truly is about, Josh Allen and what he's been able to accomplish, breaking records left and right. And I will tell you guys, this team is set up for a long run. They're set up for success. Sean McDermott, Brandon Beane, what they've brought here, they have their franchise quarterback. They now have contract extensions in place. They have a young roster, a locked-in roster. This is now the Buffalo Bills taking over the AFC East. What you saw 2 Monday nights ago in New England, that wasn't just a beat down of the Patriots. That was a coronation to who's going to be in charge here, I think, in this division.
I promise I'm going to loop Grant and Sean in, but I got to ask one more here of Sal. At what point, and maybe it was that Patriots game, or maybe it was the Sunday night game with the Steelers, did you begin to accept this team is good enough to win the division? This team is good enough to contend for the AFC? At what point here along the way did you really believe at that point?
Well, I personally picked them to actually go to the AFC Championship game this year because I thought that New England would be down. It's about New England being down and Buffalo being up at the same time. I think that had to coincide with each other. But I think for most fans, for me, really, when they beat Seattle here at home and they really got after Russell Wilson, they picked him off a few times, and all of a sudden you have the Seattle team that's scoring all these points, and sure they did. But what happened was, guys, the Bills won a shootout. We just haven't been able to do that here in Buffalo, leaning on defense and special teams for years. And when we finally said, wait a minute, this team can shoot out with anybody in the league. I think that was the turning point there to show they can play football in this type of environment, how you need to play to win games in 2021.
And the Bills are doing that, and the Bills get ready to host a playoff game coming up with the Indianapolis Colts on Saturday to lead off the 6 games of this weekend. Grant, I promise we're going to save Buccaneers and Washington football team for just a second. I'm going to swing all the way out west. Left Coast. Sean Green is based there with the Sports Gambling Podcast. Let's talk Rams for a second because they were scrambling to get in without their quarterback, Sean. And I'll go ahead and likewise on the YouTube roundtable here, we'll share the screen and let you take a look at the Rams having to play John Wolford. Hello, last week in place of Jared Goff to gut out the win over the Cardinals and just get in. What is the talk in Southern California? You're in and around there. You've been there for years. I know the Rams were in the Super Bowl a couple of years ago, but what is the talk right now with Goff, his injury status, and Wolford having to quarterback the game, Sean?
Yeah, if you listen to the podcast last week, one of my lock of the week was the Rams getting 3 points against the Cardinals. Now, certainly Kyler Murray getting hurt, knocked out of the game helped that bet, but I thought they had a really good chance. I was kind of high on Wolford overall. I followed him in the AAF. We were picking a ton of games in the AAF, and I thought he could come in and manage the offense with Sean McVay. And, Goff's status is up in the air for Sunday, but I think a storyline that not enough people are talking about is they're getting a lot of their key guys back. Cooper Kupp, Michael Brockers, and now it looks like they're going to get their left tackle, Andrew Whitworth, back. So I think that is huge for this Rams team heading up to Seattle. It's always a dogfight between these two. So I don't know if losing Goff is really so huge. We'll see how Wolford does on the road. Certainly at home against the Arizona defense that didn't have any film on him is a much more favorable option than starting your first playoff game. And of course, a quarterback starting their first playoff game 15-34-1 against the spread all time. So we'll see how Wolford does. Obviously, whether he plays or not, the big story.
All right. So, again, that is a Saturday afternoon game kind of in the sandwich. We're going right down the line. It's first Buffalo, then the Rams and the Seahawks. And then, Grant Paulsen, we get to the BUCCANBERS Go Bucs at Washington. Now, I was on with you on Wednesday before the 3 Dog Thursday podcast. You guys kind of handled me with kid gloves. You didn't try to beat me up too much on the Buccaneers' bad end of the schedule with the 4 teams they played. But I comically have been saying to everybody, this is nothing new if they're going to play Washington with a 7-9 record. This is the same type of competition they've been playing against the Vikings and the Lions and the Falcons twice. All right, defend the honor of the football team, please, Grant. Go ahead.
No, I don't think you're that wrong. They're not playing a juggernaut. And here is the problem for Washington is that while their defense is not only formidable but at times dominant, they've averaged giving up 4.4 points in the second half over the last 11 games under Jack Del Rio. They finished second in yardage and fourth in scoring. They're a sensational group led by a really strong pass rush. Everyone knows that they have 5 first-round picks up front. Ryan Kerrigan, who this year became the all-time leader in sacks for the organization, has become their 3rd outside linebacker, defensive end, kind of edge rusher now in a 4-3 front, using those ends. Montez Sweat, 9 sacks. Chase Young, headed to the Pro Bowl as a rookie, maybe their best defensive player. But they have a terrible offense, and that's not going to change this weekend. They cannot throw the ball that effectively. They've had the worst quarterback situation in a division with bad quarterback situations this year. They've released Dwayne Haskins. Alex Smith's an amazing story, and nationally, people love talking about how he, quote-unquote, wins football games. They're 5-1 when he starts. They've won largely in spite of him. He had a great game against Pittsburgh. That's kind of the list in terms of the 6 games that they've won where he's been the reason why they won. So they have to do what they've done all year, and that's win in spite of an offense that is inept and that doesn't move the ball that effectively. They got a couple really good players that are going to be good in the future. Terry McLaurin, wide receiver, is a future Pro Bowler. Antonio Gibson, they drafted at 66 overall, had double-digit rushing touchdowns this year, is, I think, going to be a stalwart in the running game for years to come. But he just hadn't materialized yet. And this is how bad it is, guys, at quarterback right now for Washington. I've been taking calls on D.C. radio all week, and I'm telling you there have been more calls from people that want them to play Taylor Heineke, who has 1 career start and was out of football a month ago, than Alex Smith, just based on what they've seen from him lately. He's not playing at 100%. His calf's bothering him. He's become immobile. So it's gotten really, really ugly. And, oh, by the way, the Bucs like to get after the quarterback. So
yes,
the matchup is not ideal, but if Washington hangs with them and wins, it's going to be because they generate a ton of pressure, get some sacks, some hurries, things like that.
All right, we'll see if they are able to do that. All right, so that's the voice of Grant Paulsen. Again, Grant with the Grant and Danny show on WJFK FM in Washington, D.C. Sal Capaccio is here, WGR Radio in Buffalo. Sean Green, the Sports Gambling Podcast and Sports Gambling Podcast network of shows, sportsgamblingpodcast.com. They are my guest. It is the YouTube Roundtable. If you're only hearing us, once again, come check us out on YouTube via 3 Dog Thursday. Search 3 Dog Thursday on YouTube. You'll find what we look like. All right, I want opinions from all of you. Again, I'm in the bag for the Buccaneers, so you know where I'm coming from on what we're about to show you. So this is why I want the guests to give me their thoughts. As I share the screen, Sal Capaccio, go first. Good idea or bad idea that Chase Young was leaving the field the other night in Philadelphia saying, I want Tom Brady, I want Tom. Is that a good thing to fire your own team up, or is that a bad thing, asking for Godzilla? Your opinion, sir?
I think Tom Brady's approach is probably more like that's cute really than to fire him up, to be quite honest with you. I mean, it's Tom Brady. I mean, come on. I don't think it's a good idea, but I don't think it really matters here, to be honest with you. Hey, look, there's one guy that can back up his play. It's Chase Young. He's incredible, right? But I mean, you know, why poke the bear? It's more of a bad idea than a good idea, but I don't think Tom Brady cares. He's so consistent in his approach that he's probably just looking at it over and going, okay, kid, I mean, you had your moment.
True. Sean Green. I don't want to taint this with anything I might say. Good idea, bad idea?
Yeah, no, I'm kind of with Sal. It's probably not on Brady's radar. He's probably worried about making sure he doesn't eat a strawberry and his sugar goes up too much. So he's got his mind elsewhere. And again, as this, Washington's coming in as a scrappy underdog. And I guess if you're a Washington football team fan, you're talking yourselves into the idea that, Tom Brady has struggled with teams in the NFC East, my Eagles, the Giants, of course, in the playoffs, and especially with teams that have a pass rush. And that is, especially, that's what Washington football team specializes in. So that's their only hope, and that is Brady's weakness. So I think that's what they're hanging on to.
We're looking on screen on the YouTube Roundtable at TB12 in the Pewter on Pewter outfit last week against the Falcons. Grant Paulsen, you've been fielding calls. What do you think? What do the Skins fans think of look, Chase Young is confident that he's going to be able to get after any quarterback, including the future first ballot Hall of Famer. But what do you think, and what does your audience think?
Yeah, I mean, a couple things, right? So he didn't go to the podium in a press conference and say that he's guaranteeing a win, right? That would be a different conversation. He didn't go to the podium and say, I wouldn't want to be Tom Brady and have to play us. I mean, he's running off the field after winning the division, exuberant, next to one of his buddies from Ohio State, and he shouts out that he wants to play Tom Brady. Number one, I've got a pet peeve, which is when guys are mic'd up and or on camera in natural moments, and then we pick apart what they say. This is different than in a press conference when you're answering a question. So I have no issue with it at all. I mean, it's just a guy being happy coming off the field. Number two, he didn't say anything bad. I mean, he didn't guarantee a win. He said he wants to play Tom Brady. Mr. Brady, is it okay if I take the field with you, sir? Do I have the honor of requesting permission to play against you, sir? Like, no, I'm sorry. He's a football player. He happens to be a really good one and one of the best quarterbacks ever. But what is Chase Young supposed to do? Not want to play Tom Brady? Not be excited about that? So to me, much ado about nothing. If a Washington football player guarantees a win, that would be really ridiculous. I don't think that's going to happen.
Should point out, again, I pointed this out numerous different places, and we bring it up here again on the YouTube roundtable. The Buccaneers have never been an 8-point favorite in any playoff game. Sal used to live down here in this area, and then he got dumb and moved back to Buffalo to freeze to death and dig out of the snow. But Sal knows this, brother. The Bucs have never been favored by 8 in a playoff game against anybody, even in the Super Bowl years, much less on the road. They've never been a road favorite ever in their not that long history of about a half dozen or so road playoff games. They've never been favored in any of them, yet Vegas, and this is what we do, Sean Green, with the Sports Gambling Podcast and Three Dog Thursday, the odds makers think this is the Bucs and the Bucs big. In fact, let's take a look at that right now while we're talking about this. By the way, free plug for one of our sponsors that's brand new. Sean will be proud of me, WinBet. And you're taking a look at their website at winbet.com and go download the app for WinBet. We were doing the ad just a little while ago here on Three Dog Thursday. The WinBet odds are out, and we can take a look at those odds right here in the middle of the screen on YouTube. There it is, Tampa Bay, a 9-point favorite, Sean Green, right now, according to WinBet midweek. The line did open around 6.5 or 7 most places, but people continuing to bet Buccaneers. Sean, a quick thought there on the Bucs, favored that big?
Yeah, well, I think a couple of things are going on here. You talked about Tampa Bay not historically being a road favorite like that. And usually it's because Tampa Bay's a warm weather team, and they're going to most likely to play a cold weather game outdoors. I think something that's a little different this year is obviously Tom Brady, Rob Gronkowski, Antonio Brown. They all have playoff experience in cold weather. So this isn't, a warm weather quarterback or even your traditional warm weather team. So I think they have that going for them. And the line movement from 6.5 to 9, I mean, some of that's just the public loading up on this Bucs team because they don't think Washington has a chance. But I think head coach Ron Rivera coming out and suggesting that they may have to do rotating drives between Alex Smith and Taylor Heineke or Heineken or however you pronounce his last name. I haven't gotten it figured out yet. Only 2 weeks in. It's the fact that he announced that could be a real possibility, I think is a red flag for their offense and for bettors.
Interesting. All right. So, boys, any thought on that? Because Sal's got his hand up on the Bucs being favored by 8.5 or 9.
Well, it's funny, to point that out with Sean, right? And he's right, because, I am old enough to remember, and TJ, you remember when the talking point in Tampa was this organization never won a game in 40 degrees or colder.
That's
and they
right.
finally did, and they wound up winning a Super Bowl. That's what happens, right? But that whole thing you talked about, too, with Chase Young, what it reminded me of was the Juju Smith-Schuster stuff. Nobody cares until it actually matters after the game, right? Juju Smith-Schuster is dancing on logos the whole year, and he comes to Buffalo, loses, and everybody makes a big deal. If they had beaten the Bills, no one would have said anything. But because they lost, it became a big deal. So if the Bucs win, all of a sudden, hey, Chase Young shouldn't have done that, right? We like to have these things. It's just like the warm weather thing. It's just like 40-degree thing. It only matters until it matters.
That's true.
I'll jump in real quick, too, on the spread, if I can. To me, Washington, having watched them all year, very predictable offensively, not in terms of what they do, but in terms of what they're going to provide. They're going to get you about 17 points tops in this game. They just don't have the firepower to go beyond that. There's nothing easy for them. There are no chunk yardage plays. The downfield vertical passing game to Terry McLaurin is largely gone as he's banged up and Smith has a hard time driving off that back leg. So it's a lot of 12, 13-play drives or nothing, and it's just too hard to do that when you're under-talented. And so what you see from them is somewhere between 14 and 19 points pretty much every single week. The weeks where they're above that, either they got a couple short fields on takeaways or the defense scored. And what I see with this line, 9 points or so, is Vegas is saying basically, I don't think they hold Tampa Bay to less than 27 or something like that. To me, that's what this game is. It's 27, 17-ish, something around there. So it makes a lot of sense to me. I just think bettors look at this and say, can Washington score with the Bucs if they have to? Like if you score 20 points against Washington, you win generally. And if you score 24, it's curtains. And I think the thought is that the Bucs, with all their firepower, all their weapons, the ability to run it when they try to, which doesn't happen very often, I think all those things say that they are going to be able to score that requisite mid-20s points.
Love the young Jedi, Grant Paulsen, although, again, he's now the full Jedi on in D.C. Weekday afternoons on WJFK. Again, Sean Green, Sports Gambling Podcast, Sal Capaccio with me, WGR Radio in Buffalo. If you're only hearing us, once more, find us on the YouTube Roundtable. Before we get out of here, do I sneak an underdog prediction out of each of you guys if you have one here for Three Dog Thursday? Sean is nodding along. I'll defer to you first. Mr. Green, what do you like here out of the 6 games where Indianapolis, the Rams, the football team, the Titans, the Bears, and the Browns are the underdogs here as we look at the list again on screen? What do you like for an underdog, Sean?
Well, we just taped our AFC playoff picks episode that just dropped, and my dog on that episode was the Tennessee Titans. I love them as a home dog. I think 3.5 is too much, and I think they have a good chance to win outright against this Ravens team. Like the Ravens team, they do a great job of really beating up inferior opponents, and this Titans team, granted they've had some issues on defense, but they've had issues on the defensive side with like letting up a ton of passing yards. You know, quarterbacks that can throw for 300-400 yards. They struggle with teams like that. And Lamar Jackson just isn't that good of holding Lamar Jackson only 51 yards rushing the first time they played earlier this season. And, you know, Lamar Jackson versus the big game is still a pretty big storyline. I like this Tennessee Titans team at home with Derrick Henry, who's just been, I mean, you know, it was the Henber to remember, and he's just a beast. I think they can control the ball. I think they can limit the Ravens' offense because, you know, granted their defense is really bad, but I think they're going to have trouble keeping pace with this high-powered Tennessee Titans offense that has a ton of playoff experience and a ton of confidence. So I love them as a home dog, getting a 3.5, but even to win outright.
All right, so Sean plugs away there for the Sports Gambling Podcast. Loves Tennessee. Quickly, guys, Sal, I know you're not going to take the Indianapolis Colts, but besides that, is there another underdog that sticks out?
I like Tennessee as well. You remember last year, 28-12, they beat them. I mean, they beat the Ravens in the playoffs last year. This is a team that's balanced on offense. If you do shut Derrick Henry down, they do have the ability to throw the ball. They have great receivers, Ryan Tannehill, and, you know, I think they could do that. But to go away from Sean because he took them, I'll say if Jared Goff plays, I do like the Rams, I think, to keep this one close because the Seahawks offense just isn't what it was, guys. Isn't what it was first half of the year. Russell Wilson is no longer in the MVP consideration and talk. So, you know, you want to give me 4 to 5 points, maybe whatever it is for the Rams. If Jared Goff's playing, I think they keep that game close. I know their offense isn't as good either, but I think that game is closer than that.
Interesting that it's only – go ahead, Grant, but it's hovering at 3.5, even with the question mark about Goff. That's interesting.
I'll take the field goal plus, yes.
Yes,
I
Grant,
like
go ahead.
The idea of the Rams. I really do because I think whoever plays their defense is great. And I actually tend to be with Sean on Wolford. I was a little disappointed, frankly, with how he played. Maybe it's unrealistic of me to have felt like he should have given them more than he did. But maybe I was spoiled by the first throw and the pick and kind of being regretful and going, oh, okay, this is bad. But
you were spoiled by his big performances for the Arizona Hotshots in the AAF a year and a half ago. Admit it, Grant. Come on. You were spoiled by that.
Very well could be. No, it's honestly, it's a little bit less to do with him and more to do with Goff. I think Goff is kind of a jag and holds them back at times. So I don't know how difficult it is to replace him in that offense, but it's a bad environment playing in the playoffs. So I'll do this at the risk of Sal swinging on me here. The Colts are a tough out. I mean, they really are. The way that they're running the ball right now with Jonathan Taylor, the defense that they play, they make short tackles in the open field. They're going to force you to go on long drives. I think Buffalo's a good matchup because they're short and intermediate passing game and being able to chew up some conversions with Stephon Diggs, you know, and their receivers running crossers works. But I do believe that Josh Allen's going to have to play hero. He's going to have to put his cape on and be great because it's not even about the Bills as much as I just think the Colts have really peaked at a good time. They've built themselves into what is a true tough January out with their style of play. So I would not want to have to play them in the first round, I would say.
All right, very interesting. All on the Saturday, too, right in a row with Buffalo, Indy, followed by Rams, Seahawks, followed by Buccaneers, and the Washington football team. We've remained very civilized, Grant and I, during all this. I will point out again for the audience here, I have pulled out the 2002 Super Bowl hat that is here on YouTube. Come check it out. That's the one from San Diego and the win over the Raiders in that playoff season. So I'm bringing out the good luck charms here on this. One more time around the room, let me plug for all of these guys, and I will show it on screen as well. You catch Sal Capaccio on WGR Radio. He is right here at Sal Sports on Twitter. He will be on the sideline for Bills and Colts as they kick things off on the wild card weekend with the first of 6 games on Saturday. Grant Paulsen is at Grant Paulsen. The Grant and Danny Show is on 106.7 The Fan, WJFK in Washington, D.C. Love me some sports gambling podcasts with Sean Green and Ryan Kramer. Look at those male models in the studio going over all of their picks and all of their podcasts. The new sports gambling podcast, latest one is out with the AFC, and you mentioned you're going to have an NFC one probably at the time that they're hearing this as well, that's out with all the picks and the sports gambling podcast. Hopefully I did well with all of the plugs. Gentlemen, thank you. I appreciate all of your time and input. Sal, stay warm in Buffalo. Enjoy the home playoff game for the first time since when?
1996. It was Jim Kelly's last game. It was the last time the Bills had a home playoff game, a loss to the Jacksonville Jaguars. It's been a long time. And guys, we're welcoming finally 6,700 Bills Mafia members to the stadium. I've been lonely down there in the moat this year.
That's true. They've had no one there for those games. There will not be anybody in D.C. at the game. The young Jedi and I were both at the 99 playoff game, Bucs and Redskins, won by the Bucs in Tampa. This one in Landover, Maryland at FedEx Field for the Washington football team in this matchup. Grant, thank you, and we'll see what happens on Saturday night. Can they keep it close, or will Brady roll on with a new era and a new legacy in Tampa Bay playoffs? We'll see.
Yeah, we absolutely will, and it's dominant defense or bust for Washington.
No doubt. Sean Green, thank you. Keep knocking them dead with the Sports Gambling Podcast. Again, publicly, thank you for all you do to help us with Three Dog Thursday through the network of shows and the website. We bow to you, my friend, and we look forward to the playoffs this weekend.
Thanks, DJ. Appreciate it, and nice talking to you guys.
Yeah, you too.
All right, you boys be well. We will continue. Brian Edwards with me talking more NFL playoffs as we continue on the show.